Karthik, thank you so much for joining us at the Last Wicket. Before we jump into the topic of the day, wanted to get your thoughts on the recently completed T20 World Cup. How did you enjoy it, and was the result? I guess the result was not a surprise to most people, but yeah, just looking for your thoughts.
I mean, I think I lost your audio a little bit. You said, did you say the result was sort of, the expected one and like what we
Yeah,
all, yeah. And for that reason, I think it was like, and especially like amazing performance by India that we can sit here and say, after a team has scored like 250 plus in the semis and the final, back to back. And, then we look at it like, yeah, this is what we expect from this team. That kind of tells you like how good they are. So from
yeah,
an on-field point of view, we got both ends of the sort of spectrum where we got a much more robust performance than expected in the first stage from the associate teams,
yeah,
uh, where, in the end of it, you're like, wait, there weren't that many upsets, but like, they pushed so many big teams close, like uh, from USA against India to
Nepal against
Nepal
England.
against England. Yeah, so,
Yeah,
uh, there were so many like great performances there. So, we got both ends of the spectrum. By the end of it, you had all the big teams there, bar Australia, and you had some really good competitive, maybe not competitive from, uh, again, typically you don't get that many really close games in a tournament like this. So that
yeah,
semi was an all-time classic. So to get that
yeah.
was pretty amazing as well. And in the end, like the best team really like showed, how good it was. So from all of those points of view, it was a great World Cup. But from obviously from like way before it began, it had been a bit of a say sordid kind of event in terms of like uh, like Bangladesh should have been there honestly, and they were
Right.
not, and the whole like drama around the India Pakistan thing, and just the ugly politics of South Asian cricket now. Like this is how it's looking, and I don't know how and what it will take for it to get back to some semblance of normalcy, where you can just look forward to a game of cricket. And of course, like it's never going to completely go away, but to the extent that it was even 10 years ago, right?
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, so
Yeah, I
that's
think I think what's interesting about cricket these days is sort of the on-field stuff. Good quality on-field cricket has to start sometimes to subside all the drama. It feels like that's
mm-hmm,
been a recurring theme in the last few World Cups and last few big tournaments. That there's just too much politics and drama going on even before a tournament starts, and then once it starts, the cricket takes over and everything is good and jolly, and the quality
yeah.
of the sport is the quality of, as you said, the associates also was showing through.
Mm-hmm.
um
And it
the
happened at a 20 team World Cup, so
Yeah,
which is quite something. So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it was absolutely great to see even Italy, doing really well against England. They had their chances and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, performing well. I think the thing that as I look back though is we always think about T20 as this really variable format, high variance as possible. Just the format is based in such a way, and yet I look back at the last four World Cups, and I think at least in three of them, the best T20 team has won. Like maybe Australia winning in Dubai might be considered an exception. So otherwise, England winning and then twice India. Um,
Mm-hmm.
would you agree that despite all these variations that the game has, and despite the fight that the associates are showing, the results have been more or less along the lines of expected, not just in this World Cup, but I would say in the last three, four World Cups. I think 2021, I don't think anybody would be surprised at the start if we said England would win.
Yeah, no, yeah, 22.
22,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. The thing is, we do tend to kind of, at the end of these things, slightly rewrite narratives as well. Like, okay, once this team has won, of course,
Yeah,
Australia, yes, it was. completely unexpected. And yeah, and that was a very like toss influenced tournament right through the
Hmm.
2021 one in the UAE. Uh, but yeah, when conditions have offered a fairly level playing field, I think the best teams have tended to kind of pull through.
Yeah,
Again, you can't really say it across the board in these last three editions either, but by and large, right?
yeah,
So, and England definitely like, especially that semi-final performance. Once that happened, even though Pakistan during that tournament had put together a really good run, had a really good bowling attack, you knew that this was like a level above that team, that England team then. So, yeah, it has just so happened. Uh, it's also, I think, typically there's like one team kind of leading the way and like slightly ahead of the curve. And I have a feeling it's going to get a little narrower in terms of other teams catching up. Maybe like India, just in terms of reserves of talent, are still like kind of way ahead. But, you know,
hmm,
like if you take out Bumrah from, some of those matches that we had,
right,
uh, take out Bumrah and it narrows the field a lot more, I feel. And take
yeah,
out Hardik Pandya and that changes things again, like in a big way, right? And these are two generational guys who've been there in different ways, but they've been there like for a decade now, and they are in their 30s, early to mid 30s, and so uh, like once they go, even though India are producing some incredible batting talent, especially in shorter formats, uh, I feel this will kind of narrow the thing because it's how often do you get players like that? Bumrah, like
right.
I don't know, like once in ever, I guess. And somebody like an all rounder as good as Hardik Pandya once in, if you're lucky if you get him once in a generation, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, there's been players like Akshar Patel who've been,
Mm-hmm.
getting better and better. Like he was always a valuable cricketer, but he's taken his batting to another level in the last 3 to 4 years. So, yeah, just that whole mix makes it really, really challenging to push India. But to your point, I think as some of these cricketers come to the second half or the latter half of their careers, there's definitely going to start to phase out and
Mm-hmm.
go away from their peak. So that's where probably the competition will start getting narrower.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, let's dive into our main topic. So today is the 25th anniversary, and I still can't believe it's been 25 years of the famous Kolkata Test of 2001. Before we talk about the series itself and the match, it's important to set context for people who were maybe too young to remember or for anybody who's forgotten. Karthik, do you want to paint a picture of where you think Indian cricket was going into that series? And yeah, just your thoughts on how they were facing, looking in terms of facing the mighty Australians.
Yeah. I think India was just coming off one of the worst years they had as especially a test team. Yeah, I mean, people talk a lot about the impact of the match fixing scandal of 2000 and how that really put Indian cricket in the sort of doldrums. And yeah, it too psychologically, like I mean, a lot of the people I know, enough people who've been like, I stopped watching cricket after that, or at least I stopped for a little while after that, or
Right,
various things like that. But in terms of the test team itself, it was just one player who was anyway kind of approaching the end of his career, Mohammad Azharuddin, who was, kind of like he was out of the picture because of that. So in terms of personnel itself, it wasn't as big a change. That
hmm,
was more, say, the one day team where Ajay Jadeja also, the other people who were banned were Ajay Sharma, who hadn't been playing for India for many years, Manoj Prabhakar, who had been retired for many years from international cricket. So I think the cricketing on-field impact of that is sometimes kind of gets overblown in kind of media narratives.
hmm,
I mean, of course, it had an impact on you're just coming out of this thing where you're getting players banned and like there's an atmosphere of kind of almost distrust around the
Right.
team and all of that. On field, the bigger issues were they'd been struggling. Like they went to Australia, lost 3-0, came back, lost 2-0 to South Africa at home. Uh, and those two were, were series where more or less India had their best sort of bowlers around,
Mm.
right? And then they lose Anil Kumble. That's the biggest thing in the preceding year, to a sort of long-term shoulder injury, right? And I feel now, like, looking back, that's the thing that I almost don't understand, is that how did anyone give India a chance at all against Australia? Because they lost Kumble to and he basically, in Indian conditions, losing Kumble is like, it's the worst blow imaginable. Now, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it wasn't like we had, uh, uh, Srinath was there, of course,
Yeah.
but right. So in the series without Kumble before this, India had played Zimbabwe in the start of the season in late 2000, and they had won 1-0 in a two-test series, and like the second test in Delhi was the second test on a really flat pitch. They just struggled to like get wickets, and Andy Flower made a double hundred, and they saved that test match. They just piled up the runs, and India's spinners looked super ineffective. They had Murli Karthik, they had Sharandeep Singh, they had Sunil Joshi. They tried all these guys, and they're like, some of them were like fairly experienced at international level. Some of them were new, but uh, it was still like, you would bank on them, bowling out New Zealand, Zimbabwe at least, right? But
Yeah.
that didn't happen. So even on-field results were like terrible in Test cricket in that year leading up to this series. And India, are going into the series knowing they're not going to have Kumble, and they had all these results. And this is an Australia team that had won 15 Test matches in a row coming into the series.
Right.
Starting with that, that chase in Hobart where they were five down for nothing. And I'm not sure that was the first of the run, but that included that run
Yeah.
where in Adam Gilchrist's debut series,
Mm.
they were five down for not much at all, chasing 300 odd, and then Gilchrist and Langer win it for Australia against Pakistan. That famous chase. So that was part of that whole run, and they whitewashed West Indies. I forget like who else they played in that in that run, but like 15 in a row. Come on, like already a record, and they hadn't won in India, of course, since 1969. And Steve Waugh is always a man with a sort of eye for history and stuff. And he's like, this is the final frontier. He was calling it that already in 2001, right?
Right.
Uh, so, we have a tendency to look back and think, oh, India wasn't that big before this series. In terms of prestige, in terms of sort of global kind of recognition of kind of, which is true. But Australia were already taking this super seriously because, you know, if they're calling it the final frontier, it's like we want to tick off every box. We're not taking any
Right.
tour. It's not like you can kind of look back and think it's like Ashes and the other things don't really matter. It wasn't quite the case either, right? So all of that was the context leading up to the series, and just before the series began, Don Bradman died as well. Uh,
Oh, right. I did not remember that.
yeah, so just before the Bombay Test, in fact, I think I'm not sure if he died on day one or the day before or somewhere in the week leading up to that. My memory isn't very clear. I do remember like teams lining up with black armbands and like all of that. And yeah, so for Australia, it's like yeah, losing your greatest ever sports person probably. And
Right.
yeah, so that lent something to the proceedings as well. I mean, some sort of indefinable kind of,
Yeah.
ingredient. And yeah, so that was the thing just in the immediate lead up to the first test.
Yeah, and
And
I
then, of
think
course,
what
like, yeah, go on, what, sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying what I also remember, and this is again me as a 10, 11-year-old boy remembering the Australia of that time, is I remember anytime they came on tour to India or went to Sri Lanka, when they expected hot conditions, their preparation was just another level. They would everybody would have really short hair, and they would have physios, and they would have, all sorts of things, which, I mean,
They
maybe
had
some
those
of the other teams,
ice vests. They had those ice
yes,
vests,
yes,
which I think they, for the first time, they were using during this series. And
yes,
so it became a bit of a point of media interest as well. So I remember, we used to get the Hindu back home, and like I remember like stories about that in the paper. And then there was a Kelvinator ad, which
yes.
also kind of like riffed off this thing and starring the Australian cricketers. Yeah, so this was like essentially like it felt. I mean, like it was everywhere. The series, right?
Yeah.
Uh, in a really big way. Like even before it began, it felt massive.
Yeah.
Which of course India, Australia, you expected, but there was something extra about it even before it began, and uh, yeah.
I think the fact that it felt big today doesn't surprise anybody. They are two
Mhm.
giants of the game, but to the point that you just made, they went to Australia, got absolutely hammered back in 2000, and yeah, still the series felt so important, particularly from the Australian side. The captain himself calling it the final frontier, all of that lend definitely a lot of hype to the series, and rightly so. And what's amazing is just the way the personnel were laid out. It should have been a one way, it should have been one way traffic, but it was anything but that. And yeah, it turned out to be yeah, one of the most memorable test series of definitely of this century, but maybe ever. Um, I also want to talk about just how India was batting, because if you look at India's batting, or just the 11 that they had. You talked about how bowlers, in particular, which are critical to win test matches, were missing. But from a batting standpoint, they did have some of the bigger names that we know today, but many of them were not as established at that point. Rahul Dravid, for example, was still fighting for a spot. Laxman was batting like a dream, and he replaced Dravid in one of these innings. Tendulkar was, of course, Tendulkar, was an established batter. Ganguly was, again, not at the same level as he was, say, in 2007 when he was retiring. So, what do you think that, and of course, the openers were not as credible as, let's say the Gambhirs and Sehwags of the generation that followed. So, what are your thoughts on the batting talent and depth that India had? Because literally the first three innings of the series, India did not even post 225.
Yeah. So yeah, there were a lot of question marks there. One was, I mean, Dravid was established, and he'd
Mhm.
even scored like a double hundred in that series against Zimbabwe, and he'd gone through a bit of a rough patch in Australia, and even in the South Africa series, I don't think he scored too many runs from memory. But yeah, in the Zimbabwe series, him and Sachin were scoring big runs, and Laxman was back in the team. It was very weird because Laxman, he scores 167 in Sydney,
Right.
and it's like he's finally arrived after a very slow start to his career. Everybody backed him because of the talent he had, but also he was opening, right? Because that was the only slot for him, more or less. Uh, and then he comes back to India and he basically tells them, "Look, I don't want to open. I'm a middle order batter." And then they're like, "Okay, fine. That means you'll have to sit out," because they brought back Azharuddin for that South Africa series, uh, right? And he scores 100 in his final test as well, 99th test in Bangalore, and anyway, so but Lakshman doesn't play that series right
Yeah.
after scoring the 167. And so he comes back in the Zimbabwe series, barely gets to bat because everybody above him is scoring so many runs. I remember like some really pretty, one or two really pretty like 20s and 30s and stuff, but that's about it. The openers, Shiv Sundar Das had just made his debut. That year that we spoke about also included Bangladesh's inaugural test in Dhaka. I'd forgotten that. Before the Zimbabwe series, that was Saurav Ganguly's first test as captain as well. And we speak about India's bowlers struggling without Kumble, right? They had Srinath, they had on paper a reasonable attack, but in Bangladesh's very first innings in Test cricket, they scored 400 plus. Aminul Islam scores a century. Habibul Bashir scores 70 odd, and so that was again like more cause for alarm bells. India eventually won that test pretty comfortably, but not comfortably in the sense that even when they batted first innings, I think the top order didn't do much. And I think Ganguly scored runs, and then Sunil Joshi scored. Was it 90 or was it a century? I'm blanking out on that. But Sunil Joshi like made a big batting contribution to kind of rescue India in the first innings there. In any case, so like it adds to the whole like thing of the struggle
Yeah.
over the preceding years, right? On the batting, coming back to that, yeah. So Shiv Sundar Das had made his debut in that Test match. Sadagopan Ramesh had been playing for just a year, like since 1999, and so yeah, lots of doubts. Ramesh was like a incredible timer of the ball, but like technically kind of like people looked at his game with a bit of suspicion because he didn't move his feet much and very hands kind of player, right at the top of the order against the new ball. How's he going to do against Australia's, you know, this
Yeah.
Australia attack? And Shiv Sundar Das, super inexperienced, had scored 100 against Zimbabwe, but what does that say about any player?
Yeah.
Laxman, of course, he was back in the team, and finally it felt like, okay, he's found that spot. Like Azhar not being around anymore meant there is a spot at number six, and probably for the foreseeable future, this is the guy for it. Uh, and yeah, I mean, Ganguly is kind of like there have always been kind of like suspicion around the technical side of his game, even
Right.
since his like the '96 Test debut. From that period on, he'd been scoring runs, but uh,
I think the
there'd always
short ball, for
the
example,
short
was
ball. Also, yeah, various things. Like early on, his leg side game was a lot under question, and yeah, his handling of the short ball as well, and the offside game. While it was he scored a lot of runs there,
yeah.
made some amazing shots and stuff. There's always this feeling that he has a tendency to kind of play away from, similar to Ramesh in a way, like play away from his
Mm,
body and a
right.
strength becoming a weakness kind of thing. And against a really good bowling attack, how does that translate? Yeah, and Dravid hadn't scored runs in Australia, so there was something there for him. So it was even more a case now than we would think of, like uh, this feeling of Sachin carrying this batting,
Right.
right? They were all really good players. There's no doubt about that. But there's still a sense that in terms of who would you really rely on in like any kind of situation, it felt like it's Sachin, or like there's a bunch of question marks here.
Yeah.
But a bunch of promise and question marks. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that was broadly the picture going into the series.
Let's talk about the first test. Now, India played the first test in Mumbai. They lost that within 3 days. The wicket taker from India's perspective in that was young Harbhajan Singh, who, if I remember, and I don't remember if this was from an interview or where I remember it from, but VVS Laxman mentioned that once he was captaining or playing for India A, and he just saw Harbhajan get a lot of bounce and that troubled batters standing at slip. He noticed that, and that's sort of the feedback that was given to the Indian team. The Anil Kumar injury that you talked about, obviously, that paved the path for Harbhajan to come in, and he took 4 wickets. So obviously, he started off the Test series pretty well. But nonetheless, the Indians were no competition for the Australians. Matthew Hayden in particular had a good first test, if I remember. And yeah, it was done in 3 days. So it was sort of like, Sydney all over again.
Not quite, actually. It was way more competitive than the result indicates
Okay.
because, 10 wicket win for Australia. It wasn't just that. Like sometimes these quick
Hmm.
finishes, and by the end one team pulls away. You tend to think they dominated the test right from start to finish. It wasn't quite like that. Yes, few interesting things happened, which is the Harbhajan Singh selection wasn't just down to the India, I think the board president's 11, if I'm not wrong. It
Yeah.
was just before the series. Uh, it, Harbhajan, I mean, he'd been in and around. Like he toured New Zealand in 98, 99. He played at home against Australia, I think, in 98. If I'm not wrong, that's where he made his debut in that Bangalore test, which India lost. Uh, so he'd been around. He played a few tests, everybody, and he was a teenager when he started. So clearly, like, Indian cricket news is like a special talent. And so they picked him very young,
Right.
and he'd shown enough promise of that this is a guy who can bowl the dusra, which is like it was just even Murli wasn't bowling the dusra that much in say late 90s, very early 2000s. That was when he was beginning to bowl the dusra, and Harbhajan already was bowling it. Like apart from Saklan, it felt like this is the second guy who could do it. Yes, there
Right.
were doubts around his action even then and all of that, and he had to slightly remodel it briefly as well. Uh, all of that happened, and like there was some sort of like during his NCA batch, there were some disciplinary issues and stuff. Or this is what we read in the papers and things, right? We
Yeah.
never really know the ins and outs of these things, but
Hmm.
there was a narrative around this cricketer of being super gifted, but a bit of a kind of troubled kind of individual and a feisty kind of guy,
Yeah.
right? Uh, so I think that Zimbabwe series kind of prompted India to go in the direction of, okay, no, we need somebody who like a wicket taker,
Hmm.
right? Uh, and so there was a big camp before the series where there were probables kind of camp, and Harbhajan was one of them. Kumble was part of the camp as a kind of mentor, right? He couldn't play the series, he couldn't bowl or anything, but he was there overseeing the spinners and all of that. And John Wright was the coach, of course, and he had also taken over in after that series loss to South Africa. In fact, no, India played the Champions Trophy and lost the final in 2000, where Yuvraj Singh and Zahir Khan make their debuts in
Yes.
that tournament. And
Yeah.
uh, so right after that, Anshuman Gaikwad was kind of caretaker coach who had taken over from Kapil Dev. Uh, so so after that was, I think, the Bangladesh test. So that was another new development, which is that India had their first foreign head coach in John Wright.
Right.
So then there was a camp before this series, and Harbhajan was bowling really well in that camp, and that was the primary reason for India to select him. And then they said we'll play him in this board president's 11 game as well, and I think, yeah, there were like a bunch of young spinners there and Harbhajan as well. And yeah, I think the final feedback was that Laxman was captaining the team, and he also kind of like I think Ganguly had made up his mind. He made the and he's not the selector, of course, but he pushed quite strongly for Harbhajan's inclusion based on everything he saw and all of that. So yeah, that was how he got into the team. So coming to the Bombay Test, it was a very interesting game in the sense, like from the toss, which is that Australia win the toss and they bowl first. It's an incredibly rare event in Test matches in India for a team to win the toss and bowl. And Australia did that, and on a sort of bouncy and on day one kind of seaming pitch, they have India in a lot of trouble. India, other than Sachin, I think he scores two incredible half centuries in that game. Uh, some of his straight driving from that test is I think the best of his career, honestly. So India again have to like uh, I don't think they make 200, right, in either inning.
I think they made 200 only in one of the two innings there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But then Australia, they come in and they are 90 odd for four. Uh, Harbhajan is on a roll, he's on a hat trick in this test itself, right? He gets, I think, Langer and he gets Mark Waugh, and he's getting this amazing bounce and the way the ball dips and bounces. And Australia are already, finding themselves in a lot of trouble against him. And yeah, he's on a hat trick and then 94 for four. 94, I think something like that, right?
It's 5
And
for 99. I was just checking. It's
5 for
99 for
99. Yeah,
5.
yeah,
Yes,
no,
you're right.
yeah,
Yep.
that's right. So, it again, replying to 180 odd, if I'm
So they were replying to 176. You're right. Yep.
176. All right, yeah. So, it it was that 99 for 5, and uh, Hayden and Gilchrist were batting and not much to follow, right? Bourne and the bowlers, right?
Yep.
uh, and then they proceed to have an incredible partnership, and Gilchrist scores 149, which I think is rated as one of his greatest knocks. Hayden scores a century as well. Gilchrist is just, he's playing outrageous shots. Like Harbhajan is getting all this bounce and all that, and he's bowling good balls, and like he's like slog sweeping against the turn, good length. It's it's like this is the kind of guy with that eye and with that just confidence to take on those kinds of shots. And it's one of probably the all-time great innings by a visiting batter in India, and appears to more or less just take the game away from India. They 300 odd they score, right? 350 odd,
349.
um, 349, yeah. So you think it's done, but again it isn't quite. Like India two down for not much, and then Dravid and Tendulkar have a really good partnership again. This is there's a more feisty moment where there's a disputed low catch with Michael Slater involved, and he
Right.
starts
Yep.
arguing with Venkat Raghavan, the umpire, and Dravid as well, and so all of that's happening, and it's really riveting cricket, right? If this partnership goes on for a while, you could hope for India getting to say two down and close to kind of erasing the deficit, right? Or two or three down, and then there's this moment where Sachin plays a pull shot, ricochets off Justin Langer at short leg, and Ricky Ponting, super alert at short mid wicket, runs to his right, dives, and takes an incredible catch, right? It's one of those really sliding doors moments of this series. And
Yep.
from then on, India just pretty much collapsed. And yeah, from then basically it becomes like, the result is like a 10 wicket win for Australia and a
Yep.
pretty competitive test for, a test that swings either way for quite a distance. Ends in 3 days and ends with a big margin of Australian victory. Uh, but yeah, once they win, there's a deflating feeling, right? Like
Yep.
you've got to
It
come back
was
from one nil
15th,
down.
16th on
16th,
the
16th
trot. Yep.
successive win for them.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, so it wasn't quite as one-sided as it might look in on a scorecard.
Right.
Uh, but by the end of it, it did feel like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, some of the yeah.
I think
Go
what I do remember that Dravid and Tendulkar partnership and the whole Slater related catch as well. But what I do remember from the first innings that Australia batted was, yeah, just the dominance, as you said. Like I don't remember as much of Gilchrist in that, as you were talking about, just great hand-eye coordination, which for anybody who's watched Gilchrist doesn't surprise anybody, but I do remember Hayden because Hayden was just such a dominating figure in that whole series, and everything apart from not just his stroke play, just the way he was batting, and also just his figure. Like he was just a imposing figure, so it just kind of played. just built a visual on the as a viewer that was hard to forget. So I do remember that, and for some reason I was thinking it was more one sided, but as I checked the scorecard, you're right, it was 5 for 99. So India definitely had their chances. What's interesting about this lineup is the four bowlers here are Srinath,
Agarkar,
Agarkar, Rahul Sangvi,
Rahul Sangvi making his
and
debut. Yeah,
yes, so
yeah,
Rahul Sangvi obviously making his debut. Agarkar, who didn't actually go on to play that many Test matches himself, so yeah, I mean, on paper it looks like a pretty decent lineup, but yeah, Agarkar didn't have a long Test career either. So that way, it was a fairly inexperienced Indian bowling lineup.
yeah, and
In
yeah.
that,
Yeah, and right after that, Srinath and Agarkar get ruled out because of injury. Injury and illness in one case. I think Agarkar may not have been in. I forget, but both of them get ruled out for
Mhm.
Kolkata, and Sangvi is dropped. Right. So
Yeah,
the series is very interesting in that sense also because Sangvi. I mean, you you make your debut. He started off pretty, looking pretty good, getting turn and bounce on that Wankhede pitch. And, it looked, yeah, he was a really talented bowler from Delhi and, makes his debut, starts off well, and then runs into Gilchrist in that kind of mood, right? You're a left arm spinner as well, and, I think goes for more than six and over by the end of it. Uh, so, yeah, like it's one of those debuts where if you just if you're lucky to play the preceding series against Zimbabwe, you might have eased your way in or whatever.
right.
This is the fortune you have of you
Yeah,
run into this Australian team and that sort of all-timer performance from Gilchrist and Hayden as well. Like uh, ha, he'd attended a camp in Chennai, like I think a couple of years before this when he was kind of in and out of the Australian Test lineup.
right,
And so there'd been some sort of camp for Australian players in Chennai, and he played a lot of spinners and like really worked on his sweep. He got a lot of advice on playing sweeps from Alan Border, from Bishan Bedi on how to play spin, and so he done an amazing level of preparation, not just going into this series, but over years going into this series,
right,
right? And so the kind of numbers he put up to that series were a testament to that preparation. And of course, just what a great player he was, especially in Indian conditions against spin, using the sweep, being able to pace his innings. Uh, this was a bit of a rebirth for him because he'd been out of the team for a while. He'd famously gone to West Indies in the 90s and had a really poor series against Curtly Ambrose and been dropped for quite a while and all of that. There were question marks there as well, on that side uh,
right.
for him coming into this series. So yeah, that's on Hayden. And yeah, so coming into Kolkata, India lose uh, out of an already iffy attack. They lose Srinath, their most experienced and a really, really great bowler in Indian conditions, especially some of his best spells have always been in India. They lost him. They lost Agarkar. So Venkatesh Prasad comes back for this Test match, and Zahir Khan comes back into the team for this Test match, and he's super inexperienced. He's played maybe two tests before this, if not three. So yeah, and Venkatapati Raju comes back after quite a while. He's not played for India for quite a long time as well. Uh, so yeah, apart from
And
having lost by 10 wickets in 3 days, you also lost two of your senior bowlers. So
right.
it's
Yeah, the situation kept getting tougher for the Indians in that series, and as you mentioned, like the bowling attack kept changing. It's definitely not easy for a new bowler or Venkatpati Raju, for example, coming back to find that rhythm, find his lengths and follow a game plan. Um, What's interesting is, the series, the Kolkata Test starts, and India are looking down at a big total from Australia. So, if I look at the Kolkata Test, that starts with Australia scoring 445. Their captain in this case, scoring 110. Matthew Hayden actually missed out on another 100. He was out for 97. Harbhajan Singh was really the bowler who had all the wickets in his bucket. He had 7 for 123 over 38 overs. So he bowled
Yeah,
38 of the.
including the hat trick on day
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
that's correct, including the hat trick, which included. Do I remember right that there was also a handling of the ball? I don't see that
No,
on
no.
the.
So that no, no. That was Steve Waugh in Chennai in the next Test match.
That's the next test. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yep. I was trying to remember if it was Kolkata or not. Yeah, the scorecard does say LBW to Harbhajan Singh. But yeah, so they've scored a big total. India come out and they score 171. As I mentioned, this is the end of the third batting innings for India in the series, and not once have they gone past 225. And
Yeah.
so this was definitely an uphill task. And yeah, just walk us through what happened next. What are your memories of that second innings that India played?
Yeah. I mean, we'll start from day one itself, right? Where
Hmm.
I think they'll Australia lose Slater in the first session, if I'm not wrong, and then Langer and Hayden have a big partnership. They are 190 odd for one, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
193 for two is when Hayden got
yeah,
out.
yeah, 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 correct. So I think he steps out and chips one to kind of deep mid wicket or something like that. And yeah, so then a little bit after that is when Harbhajan gets his hat trick, right? And so this is the first of many sessions in that series where India pick up 7 wickets in a session. It keeps happening as a kind of recurring theme of that series. And so at T, they are, cruising Australia. By the end of the day, they are seven down, I think, with already Steve Waugh and Gillespie batting. Eight down.
I think it was
Seven,
eight. Correct.
eight down. Yeah, already with Steve Waugh and Gillespie at the crease, right?
That's
So yeah, Harbhajan had already shown in Mumbai that wow, okay, he's bowling really well. We'd always known that this is a supremely talented cricketer, but he was showing this sort of consistency of length and the way he was just constantly making batters hitting, that a spinner is bowling well if batters are defending him and it's hitting the sticker of the bat, like getting that kind of
correct.
bounce, right? And you're always keeping your short leg and your slip, all these guys interested that something could happen. So this was the way he was bowling right through the Mumbai Test, and in Calcutta it all clicked in that post T session where suddenly it's like any ball could get a wicket, and that crowd, that big Kolkata crowd. This is before the redevelopment in 2011.
Yeah.
So now there's only, I think, this capacity 65 odd thousand.
Right.
Back then it was 90 plus, and people used to say no, 1 lakh would cram their way in and stuff, right? But
Yeah.
it was a 90,000 capacity, and I don't know if it was filled to capacity, but it was pretty close, like on, I
Yeah.
think, all 5 days. So it was like one of those roaring crowds, and you know, fielders surrounding the bat. So from one end, all of this was happening right through that series. From the other, you had no idea what you could get because there was this rotating cast of bowlers
Yeah.
uh, who were largely if at best they were keeping things quiet.
Yeah.
At worst, there was no pressure coming from that end, and wickets were very rare from that other end. But you had this one guy who's still just 20 years old, still like playing his sixth, seventh, eighth test match, something like that. Uh, and suddenly every time he's bowling, this incredible Australia team are like looking fallible, right? And he gets Ricky Ponting with a really good ball, and already Ponting hasn't had a great first test. I mean,
Yeah.
he's only played one innings in the series, so it's very early doors yet. Then he comes in here and Harbhajan gets him LBW with one of those superb, like quicker ones, which just traps him on the crease and like he's playing across the line and just flump. And then Gilchrist gets one of the roughest decisions you can get from an umpire where, you know, Harbhajan, like this is an era where off spinners still largely bowl over the wicket to left-handers, right? And so getting LBWs from there is very hard. And he got an
Right.
LBW from there with a ball that definitely pitched outside leg stump. Plus, there's a kind of suspicion of an inside edge as well. And really rough decision from SK Bansal. Uh, and uh, and then uh, Shane Mohan comes in and he gets out to the most chaotic of dismissals you can imagine, where he's caught by uh, diving Sadagopan Ramesh at short leg.
Short leg. Yep.
Right? I think there's an almost collision with the batter, or I forget like exactly how it's right off the face of his bat, and there's a bit of they check with the third umpire for whether it's a bump ball and all of that, and he looks really like angry at the decision and stuff, but I think it was a fairly like clean catch and all of that.
Yeah.
But that added to that kind of sense of like that Australia kind of projected this sense of like we're being hard done by the umpiring as well. They were right in one case of Gilchrist, but yeah, so Harbhajan gets this hat trick, first hat trick in Test cricket by an Indian bowler. So suddenly this is the point where it seems like okay, series is turning now. Australia 230 odd for like I think at that point seven. If I'm not
Yeah. They
wrong,
end the
like
day at 291 for eight, and
yeah,
they lost Shane Warne at 252 for seven. Yep.
252. Yeah, right. Yeah. After that, I think Astrovix gets out as well.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so then India end that day thinking, okay, finally we're on top and like everything.
There's a chance.
And
Yep.
yeah, if I'm not wrong, this is a Friday because I remember watching the entire day's play sitting at home.
This is actually a Sunday, which is the other thing I
Oh,
was
it's a Sunday.
noticing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's yeah, it's very weird for a test match to start on a Sunday, right?
Right. That's
Yeah,
exactly what
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
So it's
thinking
a
as I was looking at this
yeah, yeah.
scorecard.
Yeah, it couldn't have been a Friday. It's a Sunday, right? So
Yeah.
we've all watched the entire day sitting at home, and then the next day you're back at school. So all
Yeah.
our updates are coming from somebody. We had this thing called the audio visual room in my school, where there's basically a TV, right?
Yeah.
And it's the only TV in the entire premises. So like every now and then we'd beg the teacher, and she'd every now and then give us permission for one person to go just check the score and come running back and report what's happened. And through the whole day, it's just dejection because like they just can't get Waugh and Gillespie out,
Right.
right? And they have a big partnership. Gillespie makes 45, just bats forever,
Hmm.
and Steve Waugh scores 100. And so I've not to this day watched any of that. I just maybe the highlights I've caught, but all of this narrative is just of dejection, the second-hand dejection of like hearing the scores from like a classmate sent out to the AV room and back. And that's how a lot of this test match gets consumed from this point, right? And then I go back home. Australia made 445, if I'm not wrong.
Correct.
Yeah, some numbers just get seared into your head, some don't, but this is how memory works. And 445, you come back home and India are already collapsing. Um, Laxman is batting, and I think by the time I get back, I think Dravid is just getting out, or I think it's bowled by one, stepping out and trying to work him
Yep.
and missing and getting bowled, if I'm not wrong. And I think there are doubts from at least the press, from what I remember of like, can Dravid play one type thing that's also happening here. Anyway, so they're already like, in the doldrums and like at one end, Laxman is playing his shots. He's looking amazing. Right. I think he had one innings in Mumbai where doesn't score much, 20 odd, I think, but there's one uh, sequence where he hits one for three fours in a row. So people are already talking about, okay, this is a guy who's looking in really great form, and he scored 1,200 plus runs in the Ranji Trophy season leading up to this,
Right.
including a triple hundred and all of that. This is one of the great runs of domestic form in Indian cricket, right? So people know that like Laxman is, you know, it almost looked like he's just waiting for that. I mean, yes, he'd already had the Sydney innings, so everyone knew, okay, this is a guy for the future. But he was still averaging something like 26, 27 in Test cricket, like because of that slow start and everything. But people were like, need that one breakthrough series that, where we're like, okay, finally he's arrived like properly, right? And there were already signs here that, he's playing his shots while India are collapsing at the other end. I think the next morning he goes on to like complete a half century and gets out. He's the last man out. When India
Yep.
174, he's the last man out. It's a bit of a dubious decision. If I'm not wrong, sort of gloved, pulled down the leg side or something, and maybe there's no glove on it, something like that. Uh, anyway, so he's out for 59. Uh, and yeah, India have to follow on. Right? There's a lot of revisionism about this now that no captain makes the opposition follow on anymore. And it's all because of what happened next year, right? Which is kind of not true because Steve Waugh kept enforcing the follow on as long as he was captain. I think, I don't know the numbers, but like more often than not, he was enforcing the follow on. But once Ponting took over as captain, he became less keen on enforcing the follow on. You tend to kind of typically not have enough time. Only if you don't have enough time left in a test match to bat, and without actually knowing, like, that there is a certain target where you have to bat with a declaration in your mind. So unless you don't
Hmm.
have time, to do that, you don't enforce the follow on. If there is enough time, do not enforce the follow on. Uh, give your bowlers a rest more than anything else, and bat for a couple of sessions, score runs quickly, and then put the team in again to bat last, right? Which is always the hardest thing. So that became more or less the accepted wisdom around cricket. And when you see an exception to that, it's very rare nowadays. Like last year against West Indies, where India, in Delhi, on a pitch that didn't break up at all, right? They enforce the follow on, and suddenly their bowlers are tiring. And a West Indies
Yeah.
batting lineup that has struggled through the series, suddenly you're struggling to take a wicket against them,
Right.
right? And Shea Hope and John Campbell have like a big partnership. And anyway, so
Yeah.
that's the sort of flip side that can happen when you enforce a follow on, because your
Yeah.
bowlers have already bowled, they've just bowled, they take a 10-minute break for a change of innings and they're bowling again with the team suddenly needing to take 10 wickets again, right?
Yeah.
It's such a physical task of endurance and skill and like, persistence to take 10 wickets in a test match. And yes,
Yeah.
you've done it quickly in the first innings, but to then do it again is like, asking a lot of a
Different.
bowling attack, especially if, and especially in that era, it was typically four-man attacks.
Yeah.
Now, I think you tend to have more all-rounders now playing and more five-man attacks, or at least four
Yeah.
plus, like at least a batting all-rounder who does a lot of bowling, right?
Yeah.
Then it
Plus
was
flatter pitches, I think, during that era.
flatter pitches then as well, right? And yeah, so, Australia enforced the follow-on. And looking back, if you just go back in time to that moment, you it's hard to like, fight with that decision. You've won 16 tests in a row. It's still like early on day three,
Yeah.
right?
They
And
bowled
you
only
you
12
have the
overs or 13th
you have
over is when India got bowled
yeah.
out
So
on
you
day
had
three.
an overnight rest as well, right?
Yes.
And you've not bowled that much in the morning, and you think, okay, maybe we finish this game. There's a chance it even gets over that day itself
Right.
or the next day. You finish it, you get an extra day's rest. Test match with very, very short breaks between
Yeah.
games, right? So I can empathize with like Steve Waugh, not just him, the entire team, they must have sat down and discussed this, right? For deciding, okay, let's stick them back in, right? Uh, and then they do that, and it starts with a fairly, I think, I don't know how much they put on Shiv Sundar Das and Ramesh, 80 odd, let me say.
52. 52.
Oh, 52. Okay, yeah. Both of them scored 30 odd. I think
Yeah.
Ramesh starts off pretty fluently, scores a quick 30 odd, gets out. And then Laxman walks in at number three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the team had just watched how fluently he was batting, how comfortable he was looking against all those Australian bowlers. And they like, look, and I think in domestic cricket, he tended to bat a little bit up the order, three, four, and, make those really big hundreds. That was what he was known for Hyderabad, for really piling it on, right? Uh, so then I think India take that decision. Okay, look, let's put the guy in form. Let's just, bank on him, give him maybe the chance to like score really big runs here,
Yeah.
right? And he goes in and I don't know. So very recently, somebody had put up one of those amazing like ball by ball compilations of his innings, right? And what really struck me is that right through that innings, this is a guy who is not defending the ball.
Yeah.
He's not like he's everything is like a drive or like a punch or like this. There's this
Right.
sense of like I want to score off this ball, of every ball, and sometimes he just happens to hit it to fielders, right? If you watch the highlights, you think he's finding the gaps like a magician, which he was, uh,
Hmm.
to be fair. But even the dot balls were just like, authoritative shots, which, are being hit to fielders.
Yeah.
And the guy was middling everything. Spin, like one bowling over the wicket, round the wicket. He's not defending one. Like, he's stepping out constantly to him or going right back. He's trying to like the bits you don't watch in the highlights are like the good lens that he's still trying to force in some way by he's trying to put pressure on all of those balls by like he's trying to put one off that length as much as he can by like stepping out or going back, and he's like rewatching that ball by ball compilation gave me like a whole new level of respect for that. I mean, of course it's one of the all-time great innings, there's no doubt about that,
Yeah.
right? Then you watch it again, you're like, this is this is a special innings just in terms of like it's not just a level of comfort against the bowling, it's a level of dominating a world class attack. You have McGrath, you have Gillespie, you
Right.
have Castrovics, who at that stage, right? Uh, like revisionism again, we tend to look back at that era and think the four-man attack was typically McGrath, Gillespie, Vaughan, and Brett Lee, right?
Yeah.
But here Bretley was injured, so Castro came in for this test. He had not played in Mumbai where Damien Fleming had played. But in a couple of years later, when they go to Sri Lanka and win 3-0, then they come to India and in 2000, early 2004, and they finally win a series in India. It's
Yeah.
Castro who's the third seamer, who is a an exceptional exponent of reverse swing,
Right.
right? So, and a lot of the Asian successes, it's Kastrovic who's the third seamer and not Bretley. So it's not as, like clear cut as this was the four-man attack that always played in that dominant era. Anyway,
Yeah.
so against this attack, Vaughan, of course, right? Against this attack, Lakshman is just looking to impose himself from the time he walks into the crease. It's not a case of like he soaks in the pressure or no, he's just, I'm batting.
Yeah.
There is this situation in front of me where we were 171 all out replying to 445 and we're 52 for one, like you said. None of that seems to have any kind of bearing on how he's batting here. He's in.
Yeah.
This is how I'm batting at this point in time, and this is how I'm going to bat here. He's looking to impose himself on this attack in this situation, and
Yeah.
you're
And
already
what's
beginning. Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry,
go on.
I was
Sorry.
going to say what one thing related to that is Sambit Bal did a cricket monthly interview with Laxman and Dravid, and when they were, he asked about this innings, and he actually asked this specific question that we didn't see you defending too much in that particular innings, despite the situation of the match, despite the dominance of the Australians, and his reply was, "Yeah, I was just playing my natural game," and that is just mind blowing, considering how like today it doesn't feel as mind blowing because we have a lot of stroke makers in Indian cricket, and we've had them for almost a decade, probably starting with Sehwag, where it was accepted wisdom to let people play their game. But in that era, in 2001, like I don't think that was a concept. I think in 2001 it was play for the team, play for the situation. Like that was always the narrative that was
I
built.
think, yeah, I think it tends to get a bit oversimplified though, I will say, because
Yeah,
there were lots of innings where like Sachin or Azharuddin, I mean, these are great players who always had the, ability to adapt to
yeah,
situations and think that, okay, this is the best possible response here and back
right,
that response, right? And it comes off or it doesn't. But there have been people who've tried to counter attack in
yeah,
various situations, like that Cape Town partnership between Sachin and Azhar.
yes, 97, yep.
Uh, it's through the history of like cricket, this has been there. So it's not like, a new concept that came in
Yeah,
because of a player or like, a Gilchrist or a Seva. Those players have always existed. They've been rare, but they've always existed. And even like the typical normal high class test batter has always had these gears and this sense of like, okay, there might be a situation where I just need to like play my shots, right?
right.
Because defending or whatever may not be my best response at that particular
Yeah,
point. So it's always been there,
yeah.
whether in Indian
I,
cricket, whether like Australia in this very series had Michael Slater, who typically played that way right through his career. And yeah, like that
I
entire
think the
team.
way I don't disagree with you at all. I do think there were always those players. The 97 partnership that you mentioned between Azhar Sachin is a really good example as well. But I think what I mean by that is sitting at home listening as a young kid, that was never the thought that was discussed. It was always like, oh, India need to be careful here. Of course, the
Mm.
team was smarter on field to realize that, hey, we need to get rid of the new ball as soon as possible, make it, rough and old. And maybe that's part of the reason why they were attacking. I mean, I'm making it up, not saying that
Yeah,
was the reason.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but my point being the teams were obviously smart. The
Mm,
top players were
mm.
smart to understand those
It
dynamics
wasn't
in the
spoken
game.
about. It wasn't spoken about
Yes.
in that way. Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. You're right. Whereas I think commentary has become a little more like kind of. I think even we had exceptions back then as well. Like I remember, for example, 81 all-out Test match in Barbados, and
Mhm.
on the final morning where India were like, they may have already begun their chase or whatever, or they were about to play, or just in the change of innings. When they
Yeah.
asked Sunil Gavaskar, okay, what do you think? 120 is the target. Like, India should win this, right? And he was already like, I think I don't think on this pitch you need somebody like a Jayasurya in your lineup
Mhm.
to be able to win this, right? So we've always had these kinds of things. I think we were younger too, right? Listening
Yeah.
to discourse around cricket and stuff, and we pick up certain things. Maybe we pick up like a dominant theme and miss out these finer details when they do come up.
Absolutely.
So I would not give credit to people talking about the game. Then I would say that in the written press,
Mhm.
I think the written press version of how cricket is reported has become more nuanced than it
Yeah.
was then because of you know say media outlets which are their cricket they're there to cover cricket before they are there to cover Indian cricket or like Australian cricket
Mhm.
or whatever. Like even now in newspapers you get a very slanted view of things by
Yeah.
that's just the nature of the game, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's wrong. It's just you're
Mhm.
writing for an Indian audience, you will write from an Indian point of view, and which
Yeah.
is absolutely fine, right? But you have like various websites, including us, like Cricinfo or CricBuzz or like other
Mhm.
outlets on the media where you're covering cricket, right?
Yeah.
You're there for an audience which is there to learn about cricket or know about, okay, this was the day's play, how did it unfold, or whatever, right? And so you have the room to talk about it like that, and
Right.
So that has changed. In terms of TV coverage of it, I think these things were already being spoken about. Uh,
Mm.
in this particular case, I don't think it was so much a decision that, look, I think it was just bat. They
Yeah.
just had to bat, right? And
Right.
each of them kind of finding their own individual way to do it. It's almost like when the situation is so like, it's almost like it's too distant to think about like, oh, we have to score. I don't know what the deficit was like, the maths and struggling with the
Hmm.
maths, close to
Yeah.
300, right?
Yeah.
Um, when that's the kind of deficit, you can't think about those things. You just have to bat.
Yeah.
And then, the runs will come and then the maths will work itself out while you bat, right? So that's the kind of situation. So where it kind of simplifies things for you. You don't have to think, you have to bat. And I think that suited Laxman especially. Plus, the Australian attack had already bowled an innings. These guys, these two openers had already kind of seen off the new ball. In India, like, you're not going to, and that was a beautiful like pitch to bat on. I think the
Hmm.
one major danger was like reverse swing, which there were windows of it. Like go back and watch highlights or watch these ball by ball type compilations. You see that there are these windows where Australia actually look very threatening, especially McGrath, Gillespie coming back and bowling reverse swing. Those are the times when there's a little bit of vulnerability that you can see where, they go past the bat a few times, or there's a few edges that go wide of the slips and things like that.
Right.
Um, Otherwise, it's lovely conditions. Ball is coming onto the bat. It's the greatest outfield in the world, probably, where you just time it, put it in a gap, and then
Yeah.
you have this constant spectacle of fielders like chasing, but the ball not losing any
Any of those
momentum.
races.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not a boundary where the fielder stops chasing, right?
Yeah.
And like it's one of the defining features of Lakshman's innings that he keeps scoring these boundaries where there's a guy always running behind the like running full tilt but to no avail,
Yeah.
right? And, so beautiful outfield ball coming onto the bat, just these little bits of windows where there's reverse swing and stuff that you need to see out. Otherwise, you just have to bat.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who was an expert at doing that at domestic level, piled on these big double hundreds and a triple hundred as well. And he's coming off this incredible Ranji season. He's waiting for this moment, this one opportunity to bat in Test cricket like he's done all his life, just not at Test level, right?
Right.
And he gets it, and he just bats, and it's just beautiful. It's just like
Yeah.
glorious, and I think he has a reasonable partnership with Shiv Sundar Das until he gets out hit wicket. He goes back to kind of tuck it
Yeah.
away to fine leg and he steps on to the stumps. Uh, and then Sachin comes in and he gets out for 10. Uh, Struggling to think of how he gets out. I think caught in the slips, if I'm not wrong,
Caught
or caught
behind
behind. Caught
keeper.
behind, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Caught behind. And then there's a bit of a partnership towards the end of day three, a pretty good partnership with Saurav Ganguly, both of them playing their shots. Ganguly makes, I think, 45,
48. Yep.
48, yeah. And right towards the end of the day, Megra gets him out with a really good ball, like that extra bounce. And then that thing we constantly feared from Ganguly, where he's just, letting his hands like just chase the ball outside off stump. And was it Markwa who reverse cups it at second slip? Is it caught Markwa?
Uh,
Uh,
I lost the scorecard for a second. Yeah.
yeah.
Caught Gilchrist actually.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, mind playing tricks. I see how Ganguly like plays that. Yeah, it's caught behind. Yeah, and four down now. End of days play, and Rahul Dravid has just come in. There's this all this like right after that pretty promising partnership. Ganguly is also out. Uh, Laxman has just brought up his 100. I think he's 109 not out at the end of the day's play,
That's correct.
and Dravid has just kind of come to the crease, right? And India is still like quite a bit. I don't know what the deficit is at this point, but
Yeah, probably
it
254 for four was the score. So
yeah.
probably
So
still
they're still
30, 40
in
odd.
deficit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're
Yeah.
still in deficit. Yeah,
And what's
And
amazing,
yeah.
I'll let you talk about Dravid, of course, who's gonna come a lot more into the picture and on that next days. But kind of similar to your memory of following this test matches, I was also in school and we had one person who had a radio, and our trip was not to that TV room like yours was to that person to get
Mm.
an update on the radio. And interestingly, we were so demoralized, especially after day two. Day three, of course, Laxman was still scoring a few runs, but that teacher turned off the radio after day two because he was like, there is no point to this." So we actually didn't get updates on day three.
Mm.
And I remember coming back. I'll talk about what I saw when I came back from day four after coming back from school. But anyways, just wanted to share a fan's perspective on that as well. But yeah, go on. Let's talk about day four, which is probably the most which is actually exactly 25 years ago because that was 14th March.
That was 14th. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, D5 dawns and it's 10:12 a.m. here, but yeah, so we are in the kind of middle of the first, not middle, yeah, approaching the middle of the first session now. Yeah, and again, we're all in school, and the updates were just like they're still batting, like it's still
Yeah.
Lakshman and Dravid, and then there'd be some number attached to that update, but basically it's just the whole day, which is just, I mean, I'd been watching cricket for a few years by then, and but nothing like this had ever, you know, happened in all my lifetime until that point. And, it's just an unreal feeling that what is happening here. I remember like one other similar occasion, but very different in just the sense of like, a partnership building, you're not watching, but this update thing happening of 97 in India playing South Africa, Calcutta again, weirdly, and again India lose that test match. But there's this one partnership where Azhar makes 100 and Anil Kumble makes 88, which for a long time was his highest test score. Uh, and yeah, like somebody going to the AV room, coming back and being like, Azhar and Kumble are still batting, right? But for a much, much, much shorter span of time.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so this is day four. And then later, you catch the highlights and stuff, you watch other videos and things, and you just see not just what has happened, but how it has happened and the kind of quality of stroke play coming from both ends. And like, uh, Lakshman just driving on the up against the fast bowlers, punching off the back foot, cutting, uh, and against one, like, stepping out, guys bowling into, trying to bowl into the rough and, getting whipped against the turn or like driven inside out from outside like stump. Like, these are the kind of shots they're playing. Like Dravid, maybe not as extravagant, not, but he's
Yeah.
still he's doing some of the same things, like stepping out to one and hitting him through, between mid wicket and mid on, and that's how he brings up his century as well, right? And there's this angry celebration, very uncharacteristic for Dravid, like
Yeah.
uh, just pointing his bat at the press box, right? Specifically at the press box because there had been like I don't remember if it was a specific thing or just general kind of chatter in the newspapers
Yeah.
and things about like he can't play Shane Warne or some, there were quite a few
Some
questions
iteration
around
of
his
that.
form
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah. His form generally and like specifically against Warne. And he gets to his 100 and, there's this big outpouring of, like, what do you think now? What do you have to say now? Right. It's
Right.
quite similar to like the NatWest final in a sense,
Yeah.
where if you remember Nasser Hussain used to have number 3 on his jersey,
Yeah. He tapped his
and
helmet
he
on the
turned
number.
around and like that, yeah,
Yeah.
right, where the questions were being asked like, should Nasser Hussain be batting number 3? And if
Yeah.
if that innings did anything, it was to show that he probably shouldn't because it's the scratchiest 100 in the history of ODI cricket. But anyway, that's a big sort of tangent. But Dravid, yeah, he has that celebration, and then now you're beginning to see the flip side of enforcing the follow on in full swing because yes, there had been the morning session, there's still a bit of new ball movement and stuff. And Then they get through that, and once they get through that, it's like Australia are just they're just bowling and waiting and hoping, right? Because their fast bowlers are tiring. Shane Warne, I think he's had a shoulder injury not too long before this series.
Right.
He's had some finger injury as well, and like that series where they play in West Indies in 2000, where Brian Lara scores that 153 and all of that, right?
Hmm.
Wasn't that far before this series, where there were doubts over one, where he gets dropped in one test as well, and there's a sort of almost like a rift that never healed between him and sorry, that
Steve
was in
Waugh.
99,
Yep.
not 2000. Anyway, but yeah, they already been like like he had a major injury in I think around 98, and then come back 99 World Cup. They were already doubters then. He was almost thinking of retiring. Imagine that, like a
Mm.
full 8 years, I think, before he eventually retired. Like he was already thinking of retiring during that World Cup, and then he pushed through and had those, match-winning spells in
Amazing
the
moments.
semis and the
Yeah.
final. And he decides, no, I am carrying on and stuff, right? But he'd had injuries, he'd had some questions around. Uh, he'd had one tour of India already, where again he was coming back from an injury and he gets smashed in that tour as well. Not just by India's players, but in the game before that against Bombay, where not just Sachin scoring a double hundred, but Amit Pagnis, calmly, like, uh, he's not had a great time in India.
Yeah.
And he actually had a really good test in Bombay in the first test, I think. I think he had a really good test as well in Australia, winning that one. But then again, those doubts come back of like, can he bowl in India? Why does he not have the same impact in India as he does or around the rest of the world? And I think looking back, part of it is just uh, timing of like him coming back on two big tours after I think injury breaks and things.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and it's not that you're playing every year,
Yeah.
like, and you get to like that sort of big sample size to kind of prove your quality over. So sometimes luck just comes into the picture, but also like uh, I think it was beginning to like be understood by him certainly because he comes back a slightly changed bowler in 2004, where he has a fairly impactful tour in 2004 when Australia do win the series. I think he's beginning to realize by now that he's bowling a little too slowly for Indian pitches, uh, especially against batters who use their feet so well.
Right.
Uh, right, and it's beginning to show in this innings where if you bowl for that length of time, some errors will begin to creep in where you see a few full tosses
Yeah.
and things like that. Like it's almost the kind of innings you have to see to marvel at how for most of his career, for 90% of his career, this is a guy giving the ball such a rip. Like nobody has turned very few, like maybe Stuart McGill turned his leg break as much as Vaughan did, but very few in history have turned the ball as much as Vaughan did, bowling leg spin. It's an art that is famously like hard to bowl with any
Hmm.
control.
Yeah.
And then you watch this innings and you see full tosses and the occasional long hop that gets pulled and all that, and you're like, wow, we're seeing all this from Shane Warne. But this is what it's taken for a guy to be bowling second innings on the trot in a follow-on situation, deep into like, how many overs does he bowl? 40 odd in this innings?
34 for Warren, 39 for McGrath,
All right.
35 for Kasparov. So yeah, 31 for Gillespie. So all four
Yeah.
bowl a lot of
So
overs.
that
Yeah.
which kind of shows that Warren isn't at his best, right? Where you
Yeah.
would typically expect the fast bowlers to not be taking so much of the workload. And maybe Warren and say Mark Waugh or someone bowling a lot more overs and fast bowlers being preserved a little more. So I think it kind of tells you that they almost kind of like some of his control goes not to the extent where he becomes unbowlable or something, but he's
Yeah.
not bowling like Shane Warne because and also because the batters are handling him so brilliantly, like, being able to like hit him both sides of the wicket. He is not able to like even keep the runs down and stuff. So the fast bowlers having to do extra bits of work. And eventually, by the time you and I come back home, we're watching the likes of Matthew Hayden and Ricky Ponting bowl. Ricky Ponting, I think, gets
Right.
like a bit of reverse swing as well. We're watching like the part timers bowl in that final session of the day and like wanting to be anywhere but like at Eden Gardens.
Yeah.
Right? And the records are beginning to just tumble now. Uh, like it to now, it must seem like what the hell? India have had so many great batters over the years, and then 236 not out was the highest test score by an India batter. Like, forget scoring a triple hundred, nobody had scored 250 for India until that point, and Laxman goes past Gavaskar's 236. He goes past 250. The partnership records also keep tumbling. Um, and the other thing that needs to be mentioned is like through all this sapping heat, through all the physical, feat that is, playing an innings of this magnitude. This is a guy with like a stiff back. He's had a stiff back right through this test match. VVS Lakshman.
Yeah.
Uh, Andrew Lepus was the physiotherapist, I think. And basically like Lakshman gives he's like a lot of credit just to be able for him to have been able to get onto the field, to be able to bat during this test match and this innings. Watching it, you wouldn't think that, right? Because of the
Yeah.
just the effortlessness of his
The
stroke
fluency
play
of
and
it.
the fluency, not just of his stroke play, but like in later years, even against spin, he wasn't quite as mobile around
Yeah.
the crease and stuff. In this, his footwork, his feet are just moving like magic here, right?
Yeah.
Right, where he is not just like in stepping out, but in being able to like rock back to pull uh, when it's not that short and stuff, right? He's playing all the shots you would want to see against one of the great spinners of all time, and he's doing all this with a back that's in really bad shape. It's in terrible
Yeah.
shape. And I think Dravid also, I think he loses like a ton of weight through that, just through that day's play. I don't know the numbers, but I do know that like by the end of it, I think they are both put on a drip or something.
That's
Uh,
correct. Yeah.
yeah. And then they have these neckerchiefs, and
Yeah.
that's the kind of iconic photograph of them having batted through the day and walking back, and they have these neckerchiefs. It looks really stylish as well, but they must be like exhausted and like absolutely drained
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. So
I think
yeah.
the one other piece that I'll highlight to your Shane Warne point, you're absolutely right that he was somehow never, just one of those things that happened where he was never at his close to his peak when he visited India. In this innings, for example, he had the worst economy. And again, I don't want to take
Mm,
everything from a scorecard. Obviously, once Lakshman got past 100, particularly 150, actually, he was really enjoying batting against Warren. He was batting
mhm.
well throughout, but against after
Yeah.
100, he was really taking the attack to him. So his
That
economy
yeah.
was 4.47, which none of the part timers conceded at that rate as well. So definitely not, a great outing for Shane Warne. Not
You
too many
also
maidens, three
yeah.
maidens in 34 compared to McGrath, who bowled 12 maidens in 39.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely not the best outing, and it kind of a tangent, but it reminded me of the 2010 India South Africa series because one of the even though it was just two test matches, if I remember right, it was a great to watch series because Tendulkar was at or near his peak, even though he was
Mhm.
37 or 36 something like that. He was near his peak, still batting beautifully. Gambhir during that short peak of his career was also pretty good. He was, I think, ranked in the top five test batters at
He was
that
number
point.
one briefly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, number one briefly, and I think during that series might have been two or three, if I
Mm.
remember right. And they were going against Dale Steyn, who was and Morne Morkel, who were absolutely in top form. And so that
Yeah.
was a great series to watch because, just the contest was so good. Like you could see exceptional bowling, and then they would beat the bat, and then next ball would be pretty good too, but would get beautifully driven to the boundary. So I felt like with one, despite of everything I've read about him, all the charm, all the beautiful action, the revolutions, I just never saw that, especially against India. And maybe it's a bit of my age, my generation, like maybe the generation before saw more than I did. But yeah, I just never saw that same charm, like the way Dale Steyn captures my mind. Somehow Shane
Mm,
Warne doesn't, and it was just
mm.
an accidental thing where he just came to India at a time when he wasn't 100%, or there were other things going on, just team politics, whatever it might be. All of that contributed to just off peak one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think like he had a couple of pretty serious injuries in his career, which he had to come out of, and I think they happened to coincide, especially the first one, for sure. I think he had surgery as well, and then he comes back in '98. And this tour also, if I'm not wrong, I could be very wrong, and like, but I think he had a shoulder issue not long before the series, so he wasn't quite at his best. And yeah, like uh, it almost takes watching a spell like this where you do see like a full toss here and there or like a long hop here and there to put all the rest of his career in context where he never did those things,
Yeah,
right? And like he was an all-time great bowler, an all-time great cricketer. People put him in
yeah,
like, if you want to pick like a Mount Rushmore of cricket, people often put him in there because why wouldn't you? Like, he is in the running to be, you know, of course, there's like a lot of arguments you can make about a lot of other players, but you can make good arguments for him being maybe the greatest bowler of all time, right?
yeah,
And yeah, so even uh, even at a time where he's struggling, he's going for four and a bit and over, which
yeah,
uh, you know he's not falling to pieces. It's not like Rahul Sangvi going for six and over against
yeah,
Gilchrist or whatever, right? Uh, in any case, like, and I think part of the thing with like Bond, I think it's a concerted thing by especially Laxman as well to, I think maybe India did recognize that, the way to like ensure that, in this situation, Australia don't get back on top is like to not keep letting one bowl uninterrupted spells where you're just defending him, defending, and, bowl
yeah,
long spells and like, really tie you down and, that changes the whole complexion of like the dynamics of how the other guy at the other end operates as well and everything, right? Whereas if you're able to kind of make the captain think, okay, maybe I should pull one out of the attack, that makes your fast bowler bowl that one or two extra overs in their spell.
yeah,
And that all adds up. And that all did add up. If McGrath is bowling more overs than one in a long innings like that, it
yeah,
says something. It says something about probably India's game plan there. And what you said about the part timers being more economical is almost like, yeah, we'll keep them on. We don't mind just batting against them. We're not going to take
right,
chances or anything. And they would have bowled to defensive field. And we did watch a lot of it where they just picking
yeah,
up singles to deep fielders, just milking the bowling, right? Yeah. So by that time, Australia were in full damage control mode, and India was just happy to just bat, milk the runs, and like get to the end of the day's play, which they did without having
yeah.
lost the wicket there.
Yeah,
Uh,
so they end the day at 589 for four.
yeah.
Lakshman walking off at 275, not out. Rahul Dravid at 155, not out. For anybody who didn't know, they batted the whole day, which is quite insane. Full 90 over day, not even, one of those days that sometimes we have these days where there's rain interruptions or slow over rate and we get 80
Yeah.
overs. They were full 540 balls and nothing could dismiss them. And truly, at this point, obviously, this is an insane achievement. They both talk about it and have talked about it in interviews since that they weren't obviously thinking too much about the result. They were just trying to play over by over, session by session, and so on and so forth. But even at the end of that fourth day, while it was incredible to come home and just see the score and be like, wow, that's a great fight back. I don't know if we were all thinking about an Indian win at that point. Um, I don't know what you remember, but I certainly wasn't.
Yeah, at that age, I mean, I was 14 then, and you know, at that age, I'm just thinking India are going to win this because, like,
Hmm.
you're just carried away by the momentum of it and all of that.
Hmm.
Now I'm thinking back. Now I'm like, there's just a day's play to go. India haven't declared or anything yet. And if India haven't lost a wicket in a whole day's play, even given granted, okay, tiring attack, follow on, all of that, granted, how are India going to get 10 wickets in a day's
Exactly.
play if, Australia haven't picked up a single wicket in 90 overs, right? Now, thinking back, it feels even more miraculous.
Yeah.
Then there was a sense of, at that age, watching at that age, I'm sure like more seasoned watchers, more informed watchers at that point would have felt like that sense of the unexpected thing. For me, it was a sense of like this just uh, unstoppable wave of Indian momentum that was happening at that point or whatever, right? That's how you
Yeah.
consume things at that point. In narrative terms, not so much in cricketing terms.
Yeah.
In sort of storytelling terms, rather, right?
Right.
You're like
And
this,
yeah, you're
this
you're
sort of,
spot
this sort
on.
of, this sort of like big box set series is going on, and you know, this is where the tide turns and the good guys win or whatever, right? That's the sort of way we
Yeah.
consume cricket then. So from that sense, I was thinking India winning this.
Interesting.
There's no part of me that was thinking Australia winning this or like a draw, like, draw almost doesn't enter your head as a result. Like, of course, there are a lot of draws in Test cricket, you know that. But you're not thinking about it. Like, it's just not
Yeah.
entering your mind.
It's
So I
interesting
was
you say that
there.
seasoned watchers probably had a different view because I remember like my dad has always been the person I discuss cricket with, and the moment he walked home after that day four, I told him the score, and obviously he was probably listening in or watching or something like that, and his reaction was but wo bhi to khelenge or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
his thought process was, yeah, but they can bat out a day, it's not a big
yeah,
deal. But so I think maybe that is probably the reason why I remember not thinking about a win. But yeah, you're right. At that age, it is very easy to get carried away.
yeah, yeah. So that was me at the end of day four. And again, like day five, India just keep batting. And everybody is like, what's happening here? Why aren't they declaring? They bat almost till lunch, if I'm not wrong. I think Australia do bat a little bit in that first session.
They
Uh,
bat 13 overs.
13
So yeah,
overs, yeah.
so they probably bat an hour
So
and then give it over
yeah,
to
so
us.
like two thirds of the almost not two-thirds, but more than half of the first session, India are
Hmm.
batting,
Yeah,
right? Even after like Laxman gets out early in the day,
yeah,
Dravid continues to bat, and Mungia is there with him for a while. Then Zahir Khan, Harbhajan, all these guys come in, they bat. What's happening here? Like, uh, Dravid gets run out, whatever. 657 for what was it? Seven
seven.
declared?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So it takes until like, just probably less than an hour to go for lunch for Saurav Ganguly to declare. And at that time, it must have felt like, again, I was in school, I wasn't watching all this. And even if I did hear, okay, they're declaring now or whatever, I don't think I was making too much sense of it at that point. But yeah,
Yeah.
looking back now and from like a more informed point of view, and I think what you heard later on, is that people were like, why are they taking so long? Is A like, you're playing against this team that has won 16 in a row,
Hmm.
and you don't want to give them a chance
Right.
on a pitch where batting is still looking like, pretty straightforward. You don't want to give them a chance to win. Uh,
Yeah.
And then, and now having watched and covered a lot of Test cricket, you, I'm very comfortable now on days four when in typically like in at home during that dominant 12-year run, right? Very
Hmm.
often this thing would happen where India would be playing the third innings, they'd be batting, people would be like, why aren't they declaring what's happening here? This defensive captaincy, you should be declaring. And I've gotten used to this thing of like every time it's like they're learning afresh that teams don't panic like that, teams don't like they know the conditions, they know their own bowling attack, uh, and the you've come to realize certain things about that. A, you don't want to give the other team, you want to take one result
Yeah.
out of the table, right? The fourth innings winning chase, if you give
Right.
them a chance, then you know you can't set attacking fields right through.
Hmm.
You'll have to kind of like uh, like have fielders protecting runs as well, and like your bowlers also. It tends to affect how your bowlers bowl as well and stuff.
Yeah. Fewer
Uh,
slips. Yeah. Fewer catching positions. Yep.
all of those kinds of things, right? Whereas if the other team is just batting to draw, then you can fully attack them with the ball and on the field, like both
Yeah.
at the same time, and really like go for the kill there. And there are various factors that come into it, but primarily this, that you want to take one result out of the reckoning, and that's what India were doing here. But yeah, they were cutting it kind of close. They're cutting it very close by declaring
Yeah.
like so close to lunch, and which is what they did. And for the longest time, it looked like Australia were not just going to save this game, but they were going to have a outside chance of winning it. Where early on, there's I think is it Hayden who gets Prasad drops him at mid off.
I
Uh,
do not remember the drop catch. What I do remember is a good opening
yeah,
stand. Yeah.
yeah. So Hayden and Slater they bat for a while, and
Hmm.
it's like okay, there's going to be a draw, or it's probably going to be. I mean, probably going to be a draw. And they were at one stage even fearing, okay, what if Australia could. And when the final session begins, it's how much to get, like 180-ish to
So the
just
target is actually 384. So
yes, correct.
that is
So
fairly out of the picture. But yeah, so they are at T, they were 161 for three in
yeah,
43
yeah,
overs. So
yeah. So they're probably not winning this, but they're only three down,
yes.
right? They're only three down, and the bowling is looking, other than Harbhajan, of course, the bowling is looking like fairly ineffectual,
Mm.
right? And then after tea, when it's Hayden and is it Steve
Steve
Waugh batting?
Waugh, yep.
Hayden and Steve Waugh. I think Marco has just been dismissed. I think Raju has gotten him out.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So Hayden and Steve Waugh batting at the start of the final session. You're like, how is anything going to happen here? And then they turn to Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, look, you know you've got a bit of a golden arm. You can really turn those leg breaks. Let's see, what you can do here. And like interesting thing is like at that stage he typically bowl leg spin to like right handers and off
Yes.
spin to left handers, right?
Hmm.
And in that Mumbai test the previous year against South Africa, it got a three for pulling mostly off spin because like there were a lot of left handers in. I mean, I think two out of three were left handers or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was primarily bowling off spin in that spell. Here he's bowling leg spin to everyone, uh, which was rare and interesting for that time. But I think the recognition was that this is my most threatening mode of bowling, like where I
Hmm.
turn the ball the biggest and all of that. And he gets both of them, Hayden and Gilchrist, both of them out LBW playing the sweep to really full balls, and that's the breakthrough India needed, right? And in between, Steve Waugh gets out as well, caught I think leg slip uh, to
Yep.
Harbhajan, and yeah, and then suddenly like India are all over Australia, and like like the stands are full and they're like roaring, and like I think they're already lighting those paper torches that were a kind of feature of like Eden
Eden
Gardens
Gardens back.
crowds then.
Yeah.
Like from like Hero Cup final, we've been seeing that that spectacle at Eden Gardens. And like I spoke to like I did a feature on Harbhajan Singh through this series, couple of not couple of 2020, 21 I think, when it was 20 years after
Hmm.
the series, right? Not 25 as you know, 20 years, and I'd done a feature on him. And I'd spoken to John Wright, and he's like, for a moment, I thought the stands were on fire. It was just these paper torches and stuff. I think that was already beginning to happen, and like Harbhajan was on a roll. I think after Tendulkar got hit and Ganguly was about to pull him out of the attack, but he's like, no, no, give me one more over and stuff. And then
Yeah.
he gets Gilchrist out first ball. Like I think I think it's a
Yes.
sort of it's a king pair for him in that test match. He's out first ball in both innings. He's out like sweeping LBW, and then Shane Warne comes in, and Sachin gets him for a duck as well. LBW, he fails to pick a googly. It's like one of the defining balls of uh, Sachin's career as a bowler. Is
Yeah.
just like one of those magic moments, right? Like you're
Mhm.
getting the greatest leg spinner out in the world to a wrong gun that he doesn't pick, right? He tries to pull and he's just nowhere in position, and he's LBW. And yeah, it's still like the clock is still like ticking down. There's still not much time left. And Harbhajan, I think Gillespie is out, caught short leg. SS Das, like a low catch, really good catch. And then I think Megra and Castrovics, is it? Who are the
Hmm.
last pair.
Yeah.
And they bat for a while. I think they bat for
Yeah.
like 6 or 7 overs.
Yeah.
Uh,
They're together for 7 overs. Yes. And then
yeah,
Harbhajan gets McGrath deservingly as
and
the
it's
last wicket.
Harbhajan. Yeah, so it's Harbhajan bowling from one end, and I think they try a few guys from the other. There's like they bring back Sachin, then there's Raju who bowls. I don't know if the fast bowlers are tried in that period, but there's a little bit of desperation because the clock is ticking down and stuff.
Yeah.
And by this time, I think when I come back home, I think it's just around the time that they're showing they're showing replays of like the Sachin wickets, and then Gillespie gets out and all of that, and then you're watching this and you're like, what's happening? Are they not going to get this final? Are they going to still like escape with the draw here, right? And then Megra pads up to Harbhajan, and like uh, off break that gets him on the pad, and SK Bansal's finger shoots up, and some faces in the crowd are like etched in the memory of that celebration. There's a security guard or a policeman in the front of the crowd who goes up, and his face is just like if I see that person on the street tomorrow, I mean, that person will be 25 years older, and I probably wouldn't be
Right.
able to recognize him. But magically, you think that those faces are frozen in time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But yeah, you see like this entire crowd like go up in like this spontaneous kind of celebration, and it's just one of those moments that just stays with you for your life.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you must have come back home at around a similar time, right?
Yep, absolutely. I don't
Yeah,
remember specifically on day five when exactly I got home, but I do remember like watching, those Tendulkar wickets. That was it. Just is amazing how,
yeah,
and it's Tendulkar's leg spin. Like he bowled less and less as his career went on, but I
yeah.
feel like
But this was the yeah.
so many times he
Sorry,
bowled
continue.
in moments where it just worked. Like there was also this moment against Pakistan with Moin Khan wicket
Moin
at the
Khan.
end.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there were
Again, a
like
wrong gun,
some,
which yeah,
yes.
it goes
Yeah,
between his legs. Yeah,
exactly. He plays all over it. And
yeah,
and and yeah, there are some just moments like this where you're like, man, this guy can do whatever he wants. Like he's just
yeah,
magic, and that's
yeah,
sort of the feeling you get with Tendulkar. And what's interesting is obviously we are really amazed and you're enjoying that win, But I don't think anybody has really, or maybe at least I didn't register at that point. This is the first win with the follow on, after the
No, it was
follow
the
on.
third. It was the
Oh,
third time in
third.
history.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, there was
Got
of
it.
course like Headingley 1981 and
Okay.
Sydney in 1890, 95.
Yeah, I see,
I
I see.
would
Okay, so
say,
it actually
think so.
1981 I did know now that
Yeah,
you say that, but I did not know
yeah,
about the 1895
yeah,
one.
yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't
Yeah,
think
the concept was new to us for
exactly.
sure,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, because we'd never seen it happen, and we were still very young and didn't know about like Botham's ashes and all those
right.
kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like you're learning about the game through all these
Yeah.
moments, right? And then because of this, you learn about the previous instances and stuff like that. That's
Hmm.
how you learn. And yeah, and you spoke about Sachin, the magic of his bowling and stuff, right? Yeah, he did bowl a lot less towards the end of his career, but like this was the
Hmm.
period where he was bowling a lot because I think partly in this series because of the fact
Lack of
that
other
at the other end,
options.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think of all the series in his career, this is the second highest workload or the highest workload. I'm not sure which. Definitely one of the two. The other one
Yeah.
being West Indies in 2002, where
Mm.
Anil Kumble with his bandaged
Oh yeah.
jaw goes back home, right, in Antigua, and India's part-timers, including Sachin, just bowl and bowl and bowl because, I mean, that test match is the flattest pitch in history and all of that, right?
Right.
Yeah, and Chandar Paul and Ridley Jacob, they just keep batting and whatever. Yeah. So that series is the other one in the top two for bowling workload for Sachin.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was bowling consistently a lot in this time frame. In this, at 2000, 2001, 2002, he bowled a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
Before the tennis elbow issue was when he was like used most regularly as a bowler as well. And you spoke about the magic, right? Like in that 2002 series in West Indies, he bowls a lot of leg spin in that Antigua Test when Barbados, where India lose by 10 wickets, where West Indies just need to chase 5 runs or something like that. He takes the new ball because, I mean, they're going to lose anyway. So he takes the new ball.
Hmm.
And I remember that for one over that he bowls, he swings it both ways,
Right.
right? Yeah. So this is a guy who could do a lot. Like a lot of things just came naturally to him, or he just worked a lot of net in the nets and stuff. He knows
Yeah.
he's never going to take the new ball in a test match except in that kind of situation. But he just out of a kind of childlike love for the game, right? He just works on these skills as well. Because I
Yeah.
later, when I covered the end of his career and like, I covered a few test matches then and I'd watch the nets and stuff. He'd still be bowling a lot in the nets wearing his pads for some
Mm.
reason. Like this is a thing he'd do a lot. And typically in the nets, he'd bowl medium pace, not so much his leg spin.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the other aspect that I didn't realize until maybe like 3 years ago was
Mm.
he was the second highest wicket taker for India in the series.
In the series, yeah. Just these
Yeah,
three
so
wickets, yeah.
yeah, he ended with five actually in total.
I
Three in
think it was
this.
three. It
Oh,
was
really? Okay,
three, yeah, jointly second with, I think, Zahir Khan, who also picked up three.
I see. And
Yeah,
the incredible difference is obviously this is a series where India have picked up what 50 wickets, and our second highest wicket taker even jointly is still at three, and the first one ended with 32 if I remember right.
32. Yeah.
Um, so just I guess when I look back at it, all the wisdom that we have today about, hey, how do we look at teams when
Mm,
they're
mm,
going on a big test series? You're like looking at their first class wickets, you're looking at their experience, you're looking at all these things. This was not a match at all. Like this should have been one-way traffic, but it was anything but. And that is also obviously, the way India came back, all of that matters. But just that also makes this win by India such an incredible feat that they essentially won with one consistent bowler and then a couple of support staff, around Harbhajan, which is
yeah,
quite incredible considering the lineup they went against.
yeah. So, yeah, two things there. One is that, I mean, I think Harbhajan's performance is both the greatest single series performance by anyone in
Hmm.
at least, like, say, I don't know, post World War II, let's say.
Yeah.
I can go out on a limb and say the greatest single series performance by a cricketer is
Hmm.
Harbhajan Singh in 2001, right?
Yeah.
And it's the greatest and the most underappreciated performance that in my lifetime for sure, because when it was happening, right after it has happened, this is a guy who's taken 32 wickets in his first real like full series with
Yeah.
no bowling support. He's still not played 10 test matches yet, right? He gets
Yeah.
his 50th wicket in the Chennai test, I think, towards the end of it. I think Shane won in Chennai, right? He's so young. He's 20. He's the youngest member of that entire squad, I think. Of all the squads that played the threes, India rotated through a lot of personnel as
Right.
well. He's the youngest member of that team. He takes 32 wickets when nobody else is like, you're like, who else is ever going to get a wicket here?
Yeah.
And at the time, people were like, oh, uh, this is not this is not classical off spin. This guy
Hmm.
bowls too fast. Why is he not getting batters bowled through the gate? These were literally like people like Erapalli
Hmm.
Prasanna were saying these things. Right
Yeah.
after he's done this, I don't think he's, like a classical. Why are we talking about classical off spin and stuff when a guy is won you a
So
series against
effective. Yeah.
one of the all-time great teams? And
Yeah.
this is what they were talking about then. Really, like,
Hmm.
is he really that good?
It,
Right?
it's interesting because when we started this podcast 4-ish years ago, one of our
Yeah.
first guests was Arun Lal, and obviously he
Mm,
had a really good conversation, shared really nice perspectives, and I think at one point we talked about it might have been Washington Sundar,
mm.
and he brushed that away, saying Washington Sundar is not a spinner, and it is this conventional thinking that unfortunately still persists in cricket today. It like as
Yeah.
much as it surprises me that somebody like Erapalli Prasanna said that, uh,
Mm,
it's not uncommon in cricket even today.
yeah. Yeah. And but the other thing is how the needle moves, right? So at that time, Harbhajan was considered like an unusually quick finger spinner, right? He used to bowl for whatever, like, the times we would have speed guns and stuff. He'd bowl kind of late 80s kph,
Mhm.
and that was unusually quick for that time. Like people were
Yeah,
still like late 70s, early 80s maybe,
yeah,
finger spinners, and he was bowling much quicker than most finger spinners. And Murli was pretty quick as well, it has to be said. But Harbhajan was like quick, and he was reliant a lot on like bounce and kind of getting guys out caught short leg gully, slip, right? Bat pad was his major mode of dismissal and stuff. But the needle moves in such a way that like nowadays when people are like comparing, say like when people would compare Nathan Lyon and R Ashwin, they're like,
mhm.
why doesn't Ashwin bowl more like Lyon, bowl into those foot marks? Like, Lyon is the classical spinner, and
Yeah,
he gets more bat pad wickets and stuff like that. If there's a spinner in today's game who's like Harbhajan, it's Nathan Lyon. Of course, like doesn't bowl the doosra and stuff.
yeah,
And Harbhajan also didn't bowl the doosra, or he did bowl it, but he now bowled it like say Saeed Ajmal would, in terms of like
yeah,
that being like Harbhajan had one stock ball and variants of that. And the doosra every now and then, maybe once in like, even at his like peak of using it, right? He maybe bowl it once in 3-4 overs, not more often than that. It wasn't like the
mhm.
batters were playing a guessing game every ball, which he's
Right.
not a mystery spinner in the same way that Saeed Ajmal was a mystery spinner,
Yeah,
right?
or Rashid
Uh,
as in T20s today. Yeah,
yeah. So you're not constantly like worrying which way is this ball going to turn. That wasn't
yeah,
Harbhajan's mode of bowling in Test cricket, especially even in white ball cricket, but especially in Test cricket, where he's an off spinner who's trying to get you out in like, you know, with his length, his bounce, with a little bit of the natural variation, of course, and all those typical tools of a finger spinner,
yeah,
right? Angles and like, dip. Is like one of the at his when he was really at his physical peak. Like I think for Harbhajan, the thing was he's a very physical bowler. Like his
Mm.
action, was all about the kind of like he had a few injuries and things, but before that, he's a guy with like this sort of rubbery kind of like this physicality
Flexibility.
of
Yeah.
like at the crease and the way he'd go through his action and stuff, right? And that
Mm.
the kind of revolutions he'd put on the ball because of that, and the way it would come down and like with a kind of snap and like it just like
Yeah.
dip and bounce, right? I think in the latter half of his career, that's what he probably lost. And people say he began like firing it in bowling flat. I don't think he did it out of a change in style. I think it was a case of like when he did try to bowl in that old way, it wasn't quite coming out the same way,
Yeah.
right? Something changed in his action, in his like alignment at the crease or whatever. I don't know. I don't know about the technicalities. I've not spoken about it with any experts or him or anybody. I don't know that like physically. I think all those injuries took a bit of toll on him, and when he did try to bowl in that same way, right, with that big overspin and like that bounce and stuff, it just wasn't quite happening in the same way. But this was 2001 Harbhajan, 2001 to even say around 2005-ish. I think, you know, uh, like when he was on a roll, like he was unplayable
Mm.
because of this, you know, the way the ball would come out and like you would often see this side of Ponting, especially like jabbing at the ball, right? Like his hands really
Yeah.
going hard at the ball. It's because of the way the ball would dip on him, right? You don't know where is it gonna land and stuff. You've kind of you getting onto the front foot, thinking, okay, I'm going to like get close enough to the pitch of this to defend it safely, and then suddenly it's landing way shorter than you think, and it's bouncing at you,
Right.
and you don't know where it's gonna hit the sort of shoulder of your bat and pop up here or there.
Yeah.
And he had these really good changes of pace as well, especially that quicker ball, where it comes out a little flatter and you kind of hang back, but it's much fuller than you think, and it would trap you on the crease, right? He so like this was a performance where people weren't like looking at, okay, these are the things he's doing, these are the amazing things he's doing with the ball, these are the gifts he's got as a bowler, right?
Mm.
And this is the incredible talent you have in your midst at a time when you were like, we don't have Anil Kumble, what the hell do we do? And
Yeah.
then you found this other world class talent, and people are worrying about what he is not rather than what he is.
Yeah.
This was the reception that Harbhajan had, in his breakthrough series, where, people still talk about Laxman a lot, and they should, because he had an
Yeah.
incredible series as well, played one of the all time great innings, and played three, four other really great innings as well through that series. Like shorter, but like still like
Mm.
uh, just the purity of stroke play and like, the impact of those innings as well in Chennai, the 250s he scored there and stuff. People spoke so fondly about her Lakshman through that series as they should have. Speak so fondly about it still, which they should. But Harbhajan just doesn't get that same level of,
Yeah.
recognition for what was just a once in a lifetime performance. You like even if he had done nothing else, that would still be like he got more than 400 test wickets and
Yeah.
all of that, and he had a really good career. Like maybe it didn't reach the heights that you uh, given his level of ability. Just raw ability for an off spinner. There haven't been that many in history who could do the kinds of things he did, who posed that wicket threat that he did, right?
Yeah.
Finger spinners, like, they don't have very high strike rates typically. Yeah, Ashwin does, like a remarkable
Yeah.
strike rate for a finger spinner. But Harbhajan at his peak also did, like, he really take, and if he got on a roll, he was running through teams, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then not just on like really square turning pitches or something, just pitches with a little bit of help, like these ones, where teams were scoring 400 plus in the first innings,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
He was still running through teams on those kinds of pitches. Not many finger spinners have been able to do that. So I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. There's
Yeah.
either like this kind of a shade thrown on him for like, oh, his action wasn't I mean, for the times, that uh, he wasn't like reported like for uh,
Hmm.
having a suspect action pretty much through the second, like in 98 when he first came in, I think he was kind of reported a couple of times and he changed his action a bit. He got a little more like front on and stuff, and he
Yeah,
worked. I think he got a little more front on and did a bit of work on his action, and like after that, he was never reported by an umpire and stuff. Sure, like you're always going to like hear whispers about somebody who bowls in full sleeves and stuff, and
yeah,
all of that. So there was always like some whispers around his action, but also a general tendency for Indian fans and even the media to underestimate Indian players doing great things on
yeah,
in India, right?
yeah,
The level of like effort, physical effort involved to get those wickets, effort of skill involved to get those wickets. 32, in three Test matches. It's just
yeah,
unheard of, and so that's the biggest thing for me of that series of one of. I mean, like I said, it is the greatest series performance by an individual ever, or at least definitely in my watching time, and probably post World War II. And it's hugely underappreciated. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think I would agree with that. I think whenever I talk about this series with any casual fans for that matter, everybody remembers that Lakshman and Dravid partnership. That's the first thing everybody thinks about, and somehow this
yeah,
is sort of in the background. I mean, they don't. It's not like they don't remember Harbhajan, but yeah, to your point, like just doesn't get the same kind of talk, just the same kind of hype which it deserves, and considering he literally carried the whole team across this series. Um,
yeah.
the
Yeah, just
one
one
other thing,
one one small point, which I was trying to make earlier, then I got
yeah,
diverted by myself, which is Nathan Lyon, right? You can't
yeah,
find a more similar bowler to Harbhajan in modern day cricket, and people talk about him like he's the classical off spinner, right? He, yeah, for his time maybe, but that's when Harbhajan was bowling in the same way pretty much in 2001. People were like, this is not an off spinner. This is not, what off spinners look like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also remember Ricky Ponting in a recent interview. No, I mean, when I say recent, in the last 5 years,
Mm.
um, talking about him struggling against Harbhajan so much that he actually went and started asking former cricketers for advice on how to play spin, and he was almost he said he was very disappointed to hear people just say random things such as, or more sort of general things saying just be brave and all that
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it showed that not
Mhm.
only was somebody like Ricky Ponting, such a master of batsman himself, struggling to pick Harbhajan in that series, and maybe even subsequently, that he was seeking for help, but also that there were not as many people who had answers. That whole playbook of, hey, let's play all the way back, all the way front, all of
Mm.
that has obviously been talked about a lot more in the last 10ish years. I think at least for my generation, I'll say that. But yeah, it was just not as well covered. It was more about braving it out there and being mentally tough, and those things which are not
Yeah.
concrete things a batter can work on to
Yeah. I think,
overcome. Yeah.
yeah, I think after that series, I think he spoke to Azharuddin and he was like, after hearing all this stuff, finally, like, Azhar was the guy who actually gave me some constructive advice that I could
Mm,
implement on, like, I think what he told him was just as far as possible, play him off the back foot unless you
mm,
can step out, which is
yeah.
the way like uh, even Lakshman, says the same thing about Harbhajan that whenever he'd play him in the nets and stuff or in domestic cricket,
Yeah.
this is the thing, like because he bowls at that really that for
Pace.
its
Yeah.
time really quick pace, you stepping out to him was kind of hard.
Yeah.
Uh, so you generally tended to stay back. But there were times when if you saw the ball like slightly above your eye line, then you're like, okay, I can step out here and
Yeah.
be very decisive about it. And in 2004, when Harbhajan again was bowling really well, like, and when he had Kumble for company, and a Kumble who bowled one of the greatest, one of whose greatest performances came in that 2004 series in Chennai, where he took 7 for 48 on day one.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the fifth day got washed out, so that was a draw in a really like kind of delicious situation where India were
Yeah.
chasing 220 and they were 19 for no loss, I think. Uh, could have gone either way. Australia still think they would have won that game. India still think they would have won that game. They're one of those
Hmm.
tests. Kumble took 7 for 48. So Kumble was back and he was bowling really well, and Harbhajan was also there and bowling really well. And Australia won 2-1. So that was a remarkable achievement. And one of the things they did with the bat, especially Damian Martin, which you could see, was how much they played off the back foot against both these spinners, where
Hmm.
uh, they look to like let it come right under their eyes, kind of play
Yeah.
late, play around the corner and stuff, and not get into that trap of where you're like looking to
Trying
defend
to
off
reach
the front
the,
foot, and
yeah.
then you're a sitting duck when the ball dips and bounces, right?
Yeah.
So they were not getting into those positions as often where they could get out like that, and Martin especially had an incredible series. Darren Lehman had a great series. Michael Clark made his debut, uh, scored 100 in Bangalore, and
Also
so
took six
they
for nine,
they
right? He
learned a
took,
lot of.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, also took
yeah.
six
Also
for,
took 6 for 9 in Bombay. Yeah, so they learned a lot of lessons from this series as well. Went back and worked on their game against spin and stuff. And
yeah.
Ponting only came back. He missed the first three tests. Only came back for that final test in Bombay, which they lost. So even at the end of that series, they were still like, oh, it was Gilchrist's series as
Yeah.
captain, and also Ponting didn't do anything with the bat, and
Right.
so
On a
it took a
particularly
while
tough Bombay
still.
pitch.
Yeah, 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 yeah. What could he have done there, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he scored 100 in 2008 finally in Bangalore, in
Yeah.
India. That was his first and I think only Test 100 in India. But yeah,
It's
again, like what we said about Shane Warne, sometimes you only get two or three chances in a
yeah.
long career. And these are like Australian players who played a lot in India.
Hmm.
Uh, like imagine, say, a Sri Lankan player who has like say two bad tours of Australia, but they are just two tests each,
Yeah.
and that's it. They never go to Australia again, and you get kind of branded for life, right? Like, oh, he can't play in Australian
Right.
conditions. So it's tough, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Mm,
I actually to that point,
mm.
maybe one more tangent, but Hayden, for example, obviously had that amazing 2001 series, but I don't believe his returns after that were ever very good in India. And
He had a few innings, yeah, but not like that. Yeah.
yeah, not to the same extent. So there were people who were talking about that as well, that, oh, was that a fluky innings? And so there's always people out there who are double guessing and triple guessing these players, and yeah, they do not have an easy job at all. Karthik, I've taken a lot of time and we've gone into a lot of detail about the series, which is obviously well deserved. It is such an amazing series. But I also wanted to think from just where it stands in terms of, what it did for Indian cricket. Obviously, when we talk about Indian cricket, or at least the men's cricket, I should say, 1983 and 2007 T20 World Cup, followed by the start of IPL, are considered like the two big, benchmarks where things really changed.
Mm.
Uh, that is, of course, from just the things like IPL in particular, things how they changed financially. From a one day perspective, a lot of people talk about NatWest 2002, and the belief of chasing down big targets. They also chased a 300 plus in Ahmedabad a few months after
Months
NatWest.
later. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that led to the belief of reaching the finals in 2003, and then of course eventually lifting the cup in 2011. Where do you think Kolkata 2001 lies in terms of India's test history, and sort of what do you think was the legacy from there on, or what
Yeah. I
was the
mean, I'll come.
impact?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll come to legacy and impact later, but just in terms of like it's, you know, ranks with say like winning in at the GABA in 2021
Yeah.
with I would say the two kind of like most fairy tale kind of wins in Indian Test history,
Hmm.
probably. And that series win in 2001 again ranks with 2021, just in terms of like you're playing against the greatest team of its time. Not so
Hmm.
much 2021 Australia, though were an
Very
incredibly
good. Yeah.
great team as well. But India had already won in Australia in 2018-19.
Right.
But here and there, it was more a case of like India, the personnel India had by the time Gabba came around, and
Yeah.
especially that bowling attack, the level of inexperience there, and winning,
Hmm.
right? There was a sort of similar level of inexperience with India's bowling in 2001 as well,
Yeah.
and similar level of like fairy taleness about like how it happened. And there was a great finish in Chennai as well. Like it's one of the great dramatic finishes of Indian cricket for sure. And for a series of this intensity and of this like these swings to end, in Chennai like it did with a two-wicket win in a chase of 155, like uh, so like that really was the perfect finish to this series, where with Harbhajan scoring the winning runs again and all of that. So,
Yeah.
just in term, I think watching that, for me at least, like me and my friends, like my immediate friend circle, I think we just got hooked to Test cricket. We
Hmm.
became like such fans of cricket. We were already huge fans of cricket. There's no doubt about that. We were already fans of Test cricket as well, but I think this put in me and my friend group like this kind of Test cricket is the ultimate thing. Like it can
Yeah.
reach heights that nothing else can reach in sport, right? It can reach those kind. It can put you in, you know, through those kind of emotional roller coasters that nothing else can, right? And so I'm sure, like around India, a lot of kids growing up were like, "Damn, Test cricket is the thing." Right? So I think that's one legacy of it. Uh, Certainly in my life, it played a
Yeah.
huge part. And for a long time, there wouldn't be a day that went by without me thinking at least once about like that series, man. Like, now, like, of course, like, once you're like covering cricket,
Yeah.
this is your work as well. And a certain sense of jadedness comes into it where there are days when you're happy to not think about cricket at all. Forget,
Yeah.
like, whatever. But even until like the early years of my working career, there'd still be a part of my day where I just daydream about 2001. And everything else about those days became kind of wrapped in this warm glow, right? Like me
Yeah.
going to like this particular tuition class where the guy who taught us was also a cricket fan. So
Hmm.
even those things became like, we used to have conversations about cricket more than like whatever else we were trying to study there,
Yeah.
right? Me and this other friend of mine. Even those things you look back with so much more fondness because this was happening, because this was the defining thing. School, when you think about school in those months, you only think about this. When you think
Yeah.
about anything into like it's that period just becomes so much more vivid. I don't know what I was doing in like uh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a non-cricketing month in that year. Let's say like January, let's say April 2001. I don't know what I was doing
Mhm.
in April. I probably had summer holidays and I was maybe playing a
Yeah.
lot of cricket with my friends, but I can't pinpoint specific days and things, right? February, March 2001, every day I know this is what I was doing then,
Yeah.
right? So, and like I said, like it just made us like fanatics for like Test cricket,
Yeah.
right?
I I
Hmm.
will echo it in a similar manner. Like
Hmm.
maybe not this test in particular, but I think the next time India toured Australia, of course, Australia
Hmm.
had a depleted bowling lineup in that series. So, talking about just competition, it was not the same
Yeah, but
level of
still,
bowling
yeah,
attack.
but still, like when they won in Adelaide, it was unheard. You wouldn't think that India could win in Australia,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it
So yeah,
was it was the
it'd been so
first.
long, 1981, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like the first
Mm.
win in 20 plus years, and
Yeah.
that test also because cricket in Australia happens around the December time frame. You, as a kid, you have holidays. So I remember watching every ball of that test, and to me, that is where I felt some of the emotions you're expressing
Mm,
here.
mm,
Of wow, this was amazing. Like the
yeah,
fact, they scored a big total, and Ponting, I think, was the top scorer in that test from Australia standpoint, and still we fought back, and then that magic Agarkar spell to seal the victory. So that was the fondest test in at least growing up for me, and it really did make me want to watch all test cricket. It was not just Indian test cricket, like it just
yeah,
hooked me on. And I remember in whatever 2005 6 summer holidays watching Zimbabwe and Kenya play test series. Like today I would not have the time or the energy to watch that, but back then
Kenya never played Test cricket. Like,
I
uh,
mean, I'm just making an example up, but my
okay,
point
yeah,
being,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah,
point being like two, not as strong teams would be playing,
mm,
nothing to do with India, but
yeah,
you would be hooked and you would be watching every ball of it just because you got hooked onto Test cricket. And I think similar to that is the whole, the transition that happened in limited overs ODIs at that point. It wasn't any T20s, but was how NatWest and all of that
mm,
shaped our, that generation's memory of one day cricket, and just what we thought of Indian cricket in general. Like there was so much more hope, even though there were such really strong teams out there. Australia, South Africa were exceptional team. Pakistan was an amazing team back in the day,
yeah,
and yet there was so much hope because of wins like these that yes, India can do this, even though numbers wise they didn't actually pull it off as frequently as we would have liked, but it just built a lot of hope.
yeah. And I think it came at the time where, like India had just lost 2-0 to South Africa. It, lost 3-0 in Australia. There
Yeah.
was, of course, the match fixing thing, which, I
Mhm.
mean, personally speaking, it didn't affect my watching of cricket in the sense that I wasn't like, oh, And also, like, I was a huge Ajay Jadeja fan growing up, like, massive.
Mm.
He was my favorite player in the 90s, right? And then him getting banned and stuff. I guess I just recovered very quickly because I was a cricket fan and I'm like, okay, fine, we'll watch whoever
Yeah.
is there or whatever, right? But yeah, all of that was like that really low period in, of losing in Australia, losing against South Africa at home. And India hadn't lost a test series at home for a long time.
Mhm.
They hadn't lost a test. I mean, unless you count like 99, where they drew 1-1 in the test series, and then Asian Test Championship first match, they
Yeah.
lost to Pakistan in Kolkata, right?
Kolkata.
So
Yeah.
you could kind of count that as a 2-1 win for Pakistan in our test series. But India hadn't lost since 1987 a test series in India. And India had been dominant through most of the 90s at home. And I remember like watching India beat Australia in 96 in that one-off test, beat them 2-1 again in 1998.
Right.
And, but then, to lose to South Africa was a fairly like, it just felt like this is a really bad team now,
Mhm.
right? Uh, yeah, so in that climate to win like that, I think that just because it didn't immediately like turn India into like a world-beating team. Absolutely not. They went to Zimbabwe right after this. The immediate next series, they drew 1-1 in Zimbabwe. They lost a test match in Harare in the second test after winning in Bulawayo, right? So this was still a team where, uh, like you like now you can't imagine India going to Zimbabwe and losing a test
Yeah.
match.
Yeah. Results
It's
were still not consistent immediately, or even in the next
yeah,
5 years. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, but you kind of knew the ceiling of this Indian team because of this. So
Yeah.
when they did lose, you were like, what is happening? They shouldn't be losing.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, this is the level they're at, and uh, so I know that like, I think when they went to South Africa in 96, 97, for example, and the 66 all out series when they lost
Mm.
in Durban and in Cape Town, and then came close to winning in Johannesburg, but bad light and rain and all of that came in. But anyway, so that series when they lost like they did, I don't think there was an expectation of better. There was maybe like a kind of we wish or we hope that it could be better, but there was an expectation of things being better. Whereas after that, even when they went away from home, there was an expectation that we should be winning at least a test match here for the
Yeah.
series. And I wouldn't say this is the only reason for it, but this was one of the big reasons for it. The series having won it the way they did, and having in like Harbhajan and Laxman found two more players to add to like uh, you know two more like kind of ever present players in their lineups, right?
Yeah.
Of course, when you're going away from home, you're picking between Kumble and Harbhajan very often,
Yeah.
which was a hard thing to do for quite a while. But then you were like the batting was like pretty much set in stone, like at least the middle
Yeah.
order, right? And once Sehwag came in, you had five, uh, you know, top players, and so the expectation was always like, they should be doing better, even when they
Yeah.
were not.
Mhm.
And in like hindsight, when you look back, you can pick a lot of holes in the way we thought then,
Yeah.
right? For example, yeah, you could say that still didn't have the fast bowling
Right.
to win the fast bowling depth to win you test matches away from home consistently or whatever. You still didn't have various things. You can look back at Sehwag's record and say that uh, like in conditions where the ball moved around, he
Yeah.
was could be quite an iffy player and stuff. But when it was happening, I think there was much more of a sense of expectation than trepidation that you were watching cricket with. At least like
Yeah.
from how I remember it, and yeah, and this went quite a way towards that. It didn't immediately change the team or anything. It didn't make
Yeah.
them into like a world-beating unit or far from it, but it showed what they could do, and it made this rivalry. It like like ignited this rivalry in a really big way. I think this, and then
Absolutely.
India going to Australia and winning in Adelaide and drawing that series.
Yeah.
They could, and some people say should have won in Sydney as well.
Yeah.
Right. So these two series, and then Australia coming and then winning in, then it was like very clear that this was the big rivalry, right?
Yeah.
Australia was still like way ahead. India was still inconsistent. India, it wasn't like India were beating everyone else and
Yeah.
uh, number two in the world, clearly behind Australia. It wasn't like that. But whenever this series would happen, you would get really good cricket, and it kind of like began here because 99
Yeah.
2000 they'd gone and lost 3-0, and you wouldn't have thought this is how it's going to shape up over the next what is it now, 2.5 decades,
Right.
right? Where we've had, except for if of course, like Australia, India went and lost 4-0 in 2011-12. Australia
Yeah.
came and lost 4-0 again in 2013. But uh, like by and large, it has been super competitive, both in both directions. So yeah, and that kind of began here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, now in Australia, certainly even last year for that matter, wait, was it last year, 2024 for that matter, when India, Australia was going on, then at that point, like the bowling attacks were absolutely not, at the same level, but it's just that, yeah, there was so much hope and there was so much,
Yeah,
and it's also like where Indian cricket is right now, just they win so often, they win so frequently that that's almost their default expectation, and that was certainly not the case back in 2001. And this amazing series laid probably the base to, added a lot to the to that incredible rivalry.
yeah,
Karthik, I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you so much for staying with me and walking us through all the amazing memories and also, fact checking us because sometimes we do get carried away in all the old narratives. So thank you so much again for your time. Really
Yep.
appreciate it. It was an absolute honor remembering all that amazing test with you. And yeah, we hope you'll come back for another fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Mayank. I really enjoyed going through those memories again. Like,